Hello guys, we're going to be back on my laptop. I've got Jordan Maxwell playing in the background, so you can have a listen if you can hear it. So I'm going to be continuing with the next puzzles.
And when you understand the Gnostic tradition, now you can understand the New Testament as an encoded message, an encoded story that you have never been told about, and is presented in such a way to look like it's history of a religion that happened. And pointed back, no, it's not a religious history. It's a Gnostic traditional story.
I gotta go work out.
Paul the Gnostic wrote in the New Testament, Ephesians 6:12, he said, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and against the power, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." When I heard a lecturer talk about this once, it caught my attention when the speaker said, "Go back and read what it just said. We have a war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities."
Oh, right, okay.
Power, and against the rulers of darkness, which implication to the ignorance of this world, total ignorance of this world, is being ruled over. Somebody knows what they're doing, and they're misleading us purposely. So the rulers of this world of darkness imply that there's a secret group of people in the world that know better. They know exactly what's going on. They know the history of this earth. They know the history of mankind, and they are purposely misleading the human race to believe religious ideas which have nothing to do with the reality of the world we live in. So, books like Conspiracy Against God and Man, the study of the beginning and the early history of the Great Conspiracy, this is what I choose to call this subject, the Great Conspiracy against the human race. Woodrow Wilson, the 33rd president, I think he was, of the United States, said, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere, so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete and so pervasive that they had better not speak above a breath when they speak in condemnation of it." What the president is saying is that people who run this planet, the guys at the top, know that there is a very powerful secret criminal organization, like in your mind, like the mafia, like the Cosa Nostra, secret societies, and they are very dangerous and deadly. If you know about them, you need to keep your mouth shut. And I can tell you because you would not believe yourself in the world. John Kennedy said there's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. Yeah, this is 7 days before somebody exposed him to a plot. He was assassinated. The President of the United States was killed in public, and nobody went to prison. No one went to jail. It was all washed over, and nobody cared. It's over and done. He's dead and gone. Somebody killed the president and got away with murder. There is another book called World Revolution, The Plot Against Civilization, by Nesta Webster, from the Webster Dictionary family. She was very, very bright and very incredibly smart. And she wrote a book called World Revolution, The Plot Against
I don't know how we can through that.
Here is a picture that is exactly in my mind, a picture from the World Revolutionary Movement. It's called the WRM, World Revolution Movement. And it's a secret society of criminals who run banks, insurance companies, governmental systems, advisors to government. And I've known some of them personally, and I've learned some of this from the people I've known personally.
And we're
It's
so.
an incredible organization. You see in the back above the head of the guy at the opposite end of the table, you see the pyramid on the dollar bill. The pyramid on the dollar bill, the eye on the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill represents the Jewish Messiah. The Messiah in Judaism, the one who is to come, the Messiah, is a word that is used in the ancient Greek and the Hebrew religion for a triangle with an eye on top of a pyramid. Many people do not know that. Many Jews have no idea in the world what that eye on the pyramid represents. It's their Messiah. And the same word in the ancient Greek is used in the New Testament for Jesus. Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone, which is in the ancient Greek language means a triangle on top of a pyramid with an eye. So that pyramid on the dollar bill represents the human family, the whole human race. And a triangle at the top represents the Messiah, the highest intellect and the highest spiritual presence in the universe that mankind is building up to. We're all hopefully climbing up the pyramid of knowledge and wisdom to be able to reach up and touch the Messiah, to reach up and touch Jesus, the greatest knowledge that you can possibly have, but it's God. Because it's an eye in the pyramid. The eye is, of course, the sun. Anyway, here in the 11th report is called the Senate Investigating Committee on Education. It's a California legislature. It's a California state document. And as you will see, it's published by the Senate of the State of California. This is back in 1953, the regular session. It says, since many intelligent persons, even in high official positions, do not appear to have acquainted themselves with the real nature and the seriousness of communism, it is perhaps appropriate to give briefly some really informative and authentic data concerning communism. Goes on to say communism and Russia are by no means synonymous. Russia merely occupies the unfortunate position of being communism's first victim. Communism is synonymous with world revolution and seeks the destruction of all nations, private property, and all political and civil liberty. And this is what we want to talk about today. So-called, the next page in the California Senate report says, so-called communism, modern communism, is apparently the same hypocritical and deadly world conspiracy to destroy civilization that was founded by the secret order of the Illuminati of Bavaria on May 1st, 1776. And that raised its hoary head in our colonies here, the critical period before the adoption of our federal constitution. See the book World Revolution by Nestor Webster. The World Revolution conspiracy appears to have been as well organized and a continuing plot and ever on the alert to take advantage of every opportunity presenting itself or that the conspirators could create. It goes on to say it is significant in this connection that as early as 1783, when unsettled conditions and dissatisfaction in some quarters had arisen in the American colonies, A subversive anonymous sermon was circulated to excite dissatisfaction and rebellion. George Washington immediately called the army together, and in addressing them, he used this significant language. George Washington said, quote, "My God, what can this writer have in view by recommending such measures? Can he be a threat? Can he be a friend to the army? Can he be a friend to this country? Well, can he be a friend to this country? Is he not an insidious foe, some emissary, perhaps, from New York, the Empire State, plotting the ruin of both?" And then he goes on to say in the bottom paragraph, the state of California goes on to say, "It is plain that Washington believed that the center of the secret conspiracy, so far as this country was concerned, to be located in New York, and felt it to be his duty to make such a direct comment." So George Washington is saying that some emissaries from New York were plotting the ruin of our baby country, of our new country, from New York, the Communist Party of the New York State. New York has been, whether the center of this conspiracy, so far as this country is concerned, has continued to use New York as its base up to the present time. It is very apparent that in recent times, New York has held and is now holding the center for the stage for communist activities in this country. So we now see that the second paragraph goes on to say the recognition of May 1st, 1776 as the founding date of this world revolution conspiracy is not so difficult to understand when in recent times the rioting and bloodshed on a worldwide scale is all over the world on May Day. May Day. May Day is a revolutionary day to celebrate the founding of the World Revolution Conspiracy to overthrow governments of the world. I have been told by people who work at Area 51, what do you talk about when you say Area 51? May Day is 5/1. January, February, March, April, May. May Day is 5/1. Area 51 is the revolutionary movements are there in Area 51, providing the research and the development of all the communistic activities going on in the Western world. Area 51 is a hotbed for underworld research, otherworld life forms. I know that I've seen them myself, and so I know there's a connection between, ultimately, one day we will see the connection between the extraterrestrial presence in our universe and the world communist movement and the world Nazi movement. They are being led by spirits. They're being led by what the Bible talks about, demons and devils and spirits and ancient spiritual. There is something to that idea that there are life forms on this earth that are far superior to us in our intelligence, and that they are the power behind our world government, and our governments, our religions, and our institutions that guide the whole human family. It talks about, maybe Johnny, you could read this.
We have the audio. In issuing this manifesto, the communist conspirators evidently believed the time had arrived when, with the aid of ignorant victims, a worldwide takeover could be accomplished. But there were not enough ignorant victims then, and the expected coup failed. And it quotes, the communist conspirators thereupon conceived the plan for the future of supplementing the long-established secret conspiracy in existence since May 1st, 1776, with an unremitting public campaign for victims among the ignorant of all nations. And in an attempt to hide from view the underlying hypocritical conspiracy existing since May 1st, 1776, it was decided that, in such public campaign, the Manifesto of 1848 should be heralded as the founding date of communism, and Karl Marx falsely proclaimed it as its author.
Look, again, we go back to the book Conspiracy Against God and Man. It says, regarding these same secret and powerful forces, Benjamin Disraeli, who was the first Jewish Prime Minister of the British Empire, Benjamin Disraeli, the English statesman, gave testimony in the British House of Commons in July of 1856. On that occasion, he said, there is in Italy a power which we seldom mention in this house. I mean the secret societies in Italy.
Italy.
It is useless to deny because it's impossible to conceal that a great part of Europe and the whole of Italy, France, and a great portion of Germany, not to say nothing about the other countries, is covered with the network of these secret societies, just as the surface of the earth is now being covered with railroads. So he's talking about this government was moved to make the following statement. This person was moved to make the following statement. The government of the past, of the present day, the government of the present day have to deal not merely with other governments, with emperors and kings and ministers, but also the secret societies which have everywhere their unscrupulous agents and can at the last moment upset all the government's plans. We go to another book written by Nestor Webster called Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. Chapter 12 talks about the secret societies that operate in England. And here, the first page on secret societies in England, we see it is in the opinion of the initiate who belonged for years to the Stella Matutina, which was a very ancient cult, religious cult in England. And this lady who was a member of this ancient cult was being interviewed by Nestor Webster. And she said, in the opinion of this initiate who belonged for years to the Stella Matutina, the dynamic force employed as Kundalini is simply an electromagnetic force of which sex force is a part. The sex force is a part of which the adepts know how to play. They're playing with it in television and everywhere today. And the unseen hand behind all of the seeming spiritism of these orders is a system of very subtle and cunning hypnotism and suggestion. Then she goes on to say, she's being interviewed by Nestor Webster, and at the bottom is another quote from this lady. She said, I have been convinced that we, as an order, Stella Matutina of England, have come under the power of some very evil order, a cult order, profoundly versed in science, both occult and otherwise. Though not infallible, their method being black magic, that is to say, electromagnetic power, hypnotism, and powerful suggestion. She goes on to say, we are convinced that their order, Stella Matutina, is being controlled by some kind of a sun order, after the nature of the Illuminati, if not by that order itself. Some kind of a sun order is an interesting term. In order to understand the world crisis today, we need to go back 4,400 years ago to the Mesopotamian sun worship. And later became the Kcin worship of ancient Egypt. And this is where the real story begins. Kcin worship is the problem we are facing today on the earth all over the world. There is a very powerful secret society that we loosely call Illuminati. But what they are doing is they're using the occult mystical powers of ancient Egypt, and they call it Aton, A-T-O-N, Aton worship. Aton worship is the worship of the god of the sun in Egypt. The sun god was called Aton, A-T-O-N. Aton became Aten, and Aten became the sun god of Egypt. And so the Aton worship in ancient Egypt is what's dominating us today. Here is a picture of Aton, the sun god, in the ancient Egyptian system. The Aton was a very powerful secret society sun god. And the sun illuminates the human world. And so when the sun brings light into the world, we say they are enlightened, or Illuminati. They are illuminated. Highly intelligent secret societies knowing things in science and occultism and mysticism and war and technology that we humans know nothing about. But these people at the top of the world who are running our world for us, they are Aton worshippers. Now, in Hebrew, the word for God is Yahweh. Yahweh, Y-A-H-W-E-H, is the God of Israel, whose name was revealed to Moses as 4 letters called the Tetragrammaton. If there are any Jews here, you will know Tetragrammaton is a name which Israel allows anybody to use the name Tetragrammaton to represent God of Israel. But you cannot use his name. You can only use a term which was associated with his name. And that term is Tetragrammaton. Tetragrammaton in the New Testament, named and titles of God in the New Testament. And the word testament and the word Tetragrammaton is the name of God of Israel called Tetragram Aton. Tetra means 4, gram, G-R-A-M-M, means letters. Well, you'll see there are 4 Hebrew letters inside the sun first. And so the Jews are worshiping what we call the Tetragram Aton, because the Aton was the Egyptian sun god. So therefore, this will explain all the mysticism going on in the secret societies and government, all of the incredible betrayal of the human race, because we have Jews which are worshiping the Aton. And this Aton worship is all part of government, of religion, churches, synagogues. All over the world, the Aton is the dark force of world criminality. And it's 4 letters worshiping the word, the name of God in Hebrew. So it's called the Tetragram Aton. Let's talk about the sun itself as a powerful symbol. Thousands and countless thousands of years ago, the sun was obviously a very powerful symbol to the ancient prehistoric man. They didn't understand the sun. They didn't understand themselves as we know today. But the sun dominated the whole of the earth. And so about almost 4,500 years later, today the sun symbol still dominates the world of mankind in every respect. So we see that the rising sun over the
I don't know whether I've been
is
this
a very
one.
powerful picture
No, I
in the
haven't.
minds of ancient peoples. Because it represented the coming back of light. Because it gets very dark at night, very cold, and frightening, and it's only until God's Son comes and he returns. And so the question has to be asked, who owns the Son? Well, obviously nobody on the earth owns the Son. Well, if the Son is owned by someone, who would it be? And then you say, well, if you're philosophical about the question, or if you're inclined to be religious, you could say that God owns the Son. So therefore, God's Son is the light of the world. That's what we say about Jesus. God's Son is the light of the world. No, S-U-N is the light of the world. And God's Son is our risen Savior. Why? Because every morning about 5:30 he rises. And the Son is your Savior. Watch what's going to happen to the human race if the Son has ever gone. The Son doesn't come up, we're dead believers. So therefore, God's Son is the light of the world, and he is our risen Savior. And it's an incredible story about how Christianity was built up by the Illuminati given to us when we were children, and we didn't realize that the Vatican was actually the center for organized crime. I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but the Holy Father in Rome is referred to as the Holy Father. And the Holy Father is the Holy Father because he represents God. He's the original Godfather. And so that's where we get mafia, Cosa Nostra, our thing, secret societies in Italy, and basically because the Roman Catholic Church is the answer to all the connections with organized crime around the world. The Son has always symbolized not only the light for mankind to see his way each day, but more importantly, intellectual and spiritual enlightenment of the intersoul or mind of mankind. So that's why we say, oh, it just dawned on me. You were saying, it just dawned on me. What do you mean dawned on you? It means that the Son, the light of the Son, just came into your dark, ignorant, ill-informed, and unlived mind. If you've been stumbling around the world with your darkness in your mind, and someone who is trying to intellectually, spiritually advise you and teach you something, we say, well, that person is brilliant. Well, if he's brilliant and he's trying to tell you how to think, trying to show you where things come from, then you say, oh, it just dawned on me. So we say things like, oh, I see it just dawned on me what you're talking about. What do you mean dawned on me? Well, the sun just came up in my brain. I've just been enlightened. I've just learned something because I could see it now because the sun is up and now I can see what you're saying. So I can see what you were saying. It just dawned on me. Well, it's like the earth is people are waking up all over the earth on a continual basis as the sun moves across the earth. And where the light is, the people are waking up. It just dawned on them. The sun is up. Time to get up. But the other half is sound asleep. So that's what we are up against. People like myself trying to educate the world around me. But most people are ignorant and ill-informed and in the dark and have no idea in the world about the extraterrestrial connection that is guiding our destiny. And one day it's going to show. We have abilities to educate ourselves through newspapers, magazines, etc. Newspapers are called Sun community newspapers. The Daily Sun, the Sun Sentinel, the Sun newspaper, the New York Sun, the Herald Sun, the Las Vegas Sun, the Alpine Sun, the Claremont Sun, the Vancouver Sun. These are all newspapers based on the idea that the sun, when it rises, it brings light into the world. And now you can read and understand what's going on in the light. So that's why we have newspapers called the Sun Times. And here you have worldly rulers on the earth who wear a sun disc on their head. You see that in almost all the ancient cultures. The kings and rulers wear the sun disk on their head because they represent the sun god, Kcin.
Shit.
But I need to remind you, Kcin was a very powerful demonic god. It was not the god of intellectual, spiritual enlightenment. No, it was a very powerful evil god, the Kcin. And this is why today our religions of this world and our governmental systems are filled with Kcin worship. So that what looks holy on the outside is actually inside filled with dead men's bones. It's filled with all kinds of pornography and violence. It's a very bad story about how we've been deceived into thinking that Christianity represents God. It does not. We have sun helmets and have been used in ceremonies in Central America and South America, people representing themselves as sun gods. And some of the people represent, and you'll always see the sun god with the sun around their head. Native Americans worship the sun itself. And so acknowledging the sun as the basis for God enlightening the human race so we can see what we're doing each day is obvious. And this idea of a rising sun headdress goes back thousands of years. But for our purpose, we will go back only to the ancient Roman Empire.
It's a good one, this.
The Assyrians, the ancient Assyrians used to have sunrise helmets, where you can see the sunrise on the helmets of the Assyrian soldiers. But the Roman Empire, when it was being developed, also had sunrise helmets to represent that they were worshiping God's sun, the light of the world. They are the bringers of the new dawn, the bringers of the new sun that will rise. And so the Roman soldiers and the Roman generals all wore sunrise helmets. And this is where we get in the Vatican the worship of God's sun, the light of the world. The Vatican is the biggest criminal organization on the face of the earth. You can tell that by how many mafiosi and gangsters will go to Rome and bow on their knees and kiss the ring of the Pope. The idea is you better bow on your knees and kiss the ring of the Pope. Because if he decides he doesn't like it anymore, you're dead man walking. And so, in fact, the ancient Romans, in ancient Rome, there was an imperial Roman sun cult. And that's what we want to look at today. The imperial Roman sun cult in Rome, today we refer to it, it's still there, we call it the Vatican. In the Vatican, you will see the sun at the back of the Vatican as the whole instrumentality of the Roman Catholic Church is based on the sun worship of Kcin. Then we talk about the evolution of the imperial cult. The official author of cult, of the word cult, to a living emperor acknowledged his office and ruled as the divine.
That was a bad look.
In the Constitution. Because Caesar represented the Kcin, the absolute God of power on the earth. He was the epitome. He was the Godfather. Here you will see NITRO. NITRO was the imperial sun god of the ancient Roman Empire. And you will see NITRO in the ancient Roman Empire with the spokes around his head, obviously the sun rays. And then the new sun god, NITRO, in Rome today is, of course, Jesus with the sun rays around his head. This is the same thing you will see in the Statue of Liberty. This is the Statue of Liberty with the spokes around the head of the Statue of Liberty. And so it all goes back to the ancient Roman Empire, the worship of the sun god. And in this book, one reference book about the ancient sun cult, it talks about the sun cult for the first century of Europe, political background. the establishment of the cult of Solus Invicti, and the dogma being taught, the continuation of the cult of Solus Invicti. Solus Invicti was Solus, the sun, and Invicti means victory. So the sun was always going to be victorious because he dies at night and he's gone. And so the prince of darkness comes out. The one we call the devil, he's the prince of darkness. He doesn't come out till it gets dark. And so in the Egyptian system, the god of the darkness, the prince of darkness, was referred to as Set. And they realized in Egypt that the world does become dark at sunset. So he's the evil son, who is named Set. And so the invincible NITRO was the Solus Invictus. He's victorious. Every morning he will rise again. He may have been chased away and died at night, but he will come back and he will rise again. And so he's always going to be our risen Savior. The Theos Solus Invicti is a true Roman sun god. Now at this point we need to point out that in all cultures the sun was and still is represented by the eagle. For example, the eagle is a symbol for the rising sun and its glory and power. The strong link between eagles and the sun can be traced back to the ancient times and the ancient empire. The sun was always associated with eagles because eagles fly high and they have incredible eyes that can see everything. So the ancient people said, well, that's what the sun does. It flies high, you can see everything the man does. And God's watching you. And here we have Caesar. And you will see on his breastplate the sun god, Kcin, the sun god, and the Kcin is the eagle, which represents the sun god in Rome. In the Second World War, his Benito Mussolini's fascist coin on the left, and on the American side, the U.S. fascist coin on the right, almost identical. It's because America is the new Roman Empire. America is the new Empire of Rome. Why? Because Caesar, and the history books will tell you, if you go back to the history books, every morning Caesar would get up and would, quote, would go up on the hill. So we know that the Roman Senate was up on the hill. It was called Capitoline Hill. This is what we have. Every morning the president gets up, he goes up on the hill. What hill? Capitol Hill. That's what it was called in Rome. So therefore, Caesar now is officiating over the empire on Capitol Hill, the Roman Senate. And the president today has to deal with the Senate and on the hill. So we're talking about the same identical government, because when Caesar left Europe, Caesar took over all of Europe. He wasn't happy with all control of Europe. He wanted Britannia. He wanted the British Empire under his belt. So he sent his troops into England and took over the British Empire. And he set up his government in England to represent the Roman Church, the Roman Vatican, the Roman Church, or the Roman power source in England. And where was that? What city did Caesar use as the center for his powerful government in England? He chose York, England. York, England was where the center for power, Roman power in the British Empire was in York, England. Today we have New York, the Empire State. That's because it's New York is the state of the new Roman Empire. So the New York is the Empire State. Incredible story about what New York really is and what America really is. We are the Roman Empire. So we see that the eagle is representing the sun. And above the eagle's head on the dollar bill, you will see 13 little stars. You see the 13 stars together? What do they make up collectively? Collectively, those 13 stars, you will see they make up the Star of David. The Star of David is above the American eagle's head, And you will see there are 13 arrows on one side of the eagle and 13 leaves and berries, 13 leaves and berries on the other. And there are 9 tail feathers. That's because in world doctrine Freemasons, and what we call Roman Freemasons. And Roman Freemasonry, there is something called the Council of Nine. Supposedly there are 9 men who control the Vatican secret societies of organized crime. 9 men. And that's why there are 9 tail feathers on the bottom of the eagle, because the tail feathers direct them where the people can talk to. So the eagle represents the Roman Empire. But there's a problem with eagles. They only have 2 wings. They have a left wing and a right wing. And so today, that's what we have, a left wing and a right wing, trust, and a left wing and a right wing in America. So we see that the eagle is a symbol for the sun. Now comes something interesting now. The rising sun god, Shemesh, is cutting his way through the mountains of the east on his gravestone uniform seal showing the major solar deity of the Akkadian dynasty, which ruled in Mesopotamia from about 2350 to 2200 BC. You will see in the middle, inside the round circle of the sun, the sun god Shemesh is rising through the mountains. And on the right-hand side it says the ancient Akkadian sun god.
I've got to give it a day. I've got to call it a day. I'll see you soon.